The desert twilight bled across the horizon in shades of rust and violet, the last light of the sun setting fire to the rim of distant mesas. A lone rider, Colt Harding, sat beside a narrow blaze of mesquite branches, his hat low against the wind. The fire crackled quietly, its warmth doing little to ease the emptiness of a man who had grown too accustomed to silence. He tore off a piece of bread, the crust hard from days of travel, and chewed with little thought. The land stretched endlessly around him, a barren witness to years of solitude, his exile chosen but no less heavy for that choice. The crackle of the fire, the breath of the wind, the slow creak of leather, all were companions of a kind, though none could speak back. It was then he heard it. The faint sound of small feet stumbling across sand, the brittle hush of someone trying not to be heard. Colt's hand moved by instinct to a revolver at his side, but he did not draw it. He tilted his head, listening. The sound grew, and into the circle of firelight stepped a child, thin, her hair tangled, her cheeks hollow. She could not have been more than 8, yet her eyes held a depth of hunger that stopped him cold. For a moment she froze, transfixed by the glow of the fire, and then her gaze fell upon the bread in his hand. The look in her eyes was not cunning or greedy. It was desperate, animal, a plea without words. Colt broke another piece of bread and set it on a flat stone near the flames. He leaned back, giving her space. The girl hesitated, then darted forward and snatched it up, retreating just beyond the light's edge before biting into it with frantic speed. She ate as though she feared the bread might vanish if she paused, crumbs clinging to her small fingers. Watching her stirred something in Colt that he had thought buried long ago. He remembered another winter, years back, when his sister's lips had cracked with cold, her ribs pressing through her dress as she coughed through the hunger. He had stolen bread then, carried the shame of it, but she had not lived long enough to taste spring. The ache of that memory pressed into him as he watched this child devour each bite. The desert shifted again, and another figure appeared at the edge of firelight. She came forward slowly, tall, her back straight though weariness clung to every line of her body. A woman. Her mother, it was plain, though her face carried more pride than exhaustion. Her long dark hair hung in a braid down her back, feathers and beads woven into it. The firelight touched her cheekbones, caught the faint glint of turquoise at her throat. Her eyes, dark as obsidian, rested first on her daughter, softening with relief, then lifted to Colt with a gravity that made him straighten unconsciously. "You fed my daughter," she said. Her English carried a rhythm of pauses, as though each word had to be carefully chosen, but the weight of her meaning was unmistakable. She took another step closer, her voice steady though her chest rose and fell with the faintest tremor. "By the law of my people, I belong to you tonight." The word struck like a stone in his chest. Colt blinked, as though unsure he'd heard right. "What?" His voice came rough, low, a rasp against the fire's crackle. Her chin lifted, and though shame flickered in her eyes, she did not falter. "Our law is old. A man who feeds a starving child takes her family into his care. Husband, protector, kin. Tonight, I am yours." The girl, still crouched at the edge of the firelight, looked up between them, crumbs at the corner of her mouth, eyes wide but trusting. She clung to her mother's skirt, innocent of the meaning carried in those words. Colt's breath caught, his throat tightening. The fire popped sharply. The night wind shifted, but for him the world seemed suddenly narrowed to this moment, this impossible declaration. He shook his head, standing slowly. "No," he said, the word torn from deep inside. "No one belongs to me. That ain't, no." His voice cracked with something like shame, though his face stayed hard. He had known men who spoke of women as though they were prizes, debts, bodies to be claimed. He had seen what came of such thinking, had seen villages burned and lives traded like coin. He would not wear that stain. Her gaze did not waver. "It is not choice," she replied, quiet, firm. "It is our way." Colt turned away, pacing 2 steps toward the darkness before facing her again. The firelight etched a scar across his brow, a reminder of battles long past. "I can't accept that," he muttered. "I'm no man's husband. I'm no protector. You don't want to tie yourself to me." The woman's eyes softened, though her jaw remained set. Humiliation lingered beneath her composure, But so did necessity. She did not argue further. Instead, she lowered her gaze to the earth, her shoulders still proud but heavy with unspoken grief. Colt felt the shame in his refusal like a knife, though he did not know how to undo it. The girl moved then, not with words but with the simple innocence of a child who knew nothing of law or pride. She reached forward and placed her small hand against the hem of Colt's coat. Her fingers clutched the worn fabric, a silent plea, or perhaps trust offered without condition. Colt looked down, breath trapped in his chest. That touch, light as it was, seemed to split the walls he had built around himself. He had thought himself safe in solitude, untouchable. Yet here, with one child's hand, he felt undone. "My name is Naeli," the woman said at last, voice low. "And this is Tiva." Colt swallowed. His own name came out awkward, foreign in his own mouth after so long unspoken. Colt Harding. They stayed by the fire that night. Colt offered them the cabin, but Naeli shook her head. Pride or caution? He could not tell. She lay upon the earth, her daughter curled into her side, their breathing slow and even under the starlight. Colt sat watch at the fire, staring into the embers, his thoughts a tangle of memory and unease. He could not shake the echo of her words, "I belong to you tonight." It pressed against him with both temptation and dread. Morning came with a pale wash of light, painting the land in silver. Colt saddled his horse, intent on going to town for supplies. Naeli and Tiva followed, silent shadows on the trail. When they entered the small settlement, heads turned instantly. Whispers coiled through the air like smoke. That Harding's brought in an Apache. Shameful, he's cursed himself. The words carried sharp as knives, though none were spoken directly. At the store, Naeli placed a few coins on the counter. The shopkeeper's lips curled. "We don't deal with her kind," he said cold, loud enough for others to hear. He looked at Colt with disdain. "You ought to be ashamed." Colt's jaw clenched, his scar tightening. Without a word, he laid down his own coins, took the supplies, and turned to leave. Naeli followed. Her face calm though her dignity trembled beneath the weight of insult. Tiva skipped beside them, humming softly, untouched by the venom. Colt's silence had been his weapon all his life, but never had it felt heavier. Back at the cabin, the day passed in quiet. Colt repaired fences with slow, deliberate strikes of his hammer. Naeli mended a torn shirt he had left on a chair, her fingers steady. At supper, Colt placed a larger portion of stew in her bowl. She looked at him then, not with gratitude spoken aloud, but with eyes that lingered a breath too long. Tiva traced shapes in the dirt by the fire, 3 figures side by side. Colt saw it, felt it, but said nothing. That night, when the storm rolled in from the mountains, thunder cracking and rain lashing against the roof, Colt found Naeli standing outside, her face lifted into the storm as though testing herself against its fury. He stepped into the rain, pulled his coat from his shoulders, and placed it gently over her. She startled, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. The rain poured around them, soaking earth and air, but in that small act something shifted. Her voice came quiet, almost drowned by the storm. "I thought you would send us away." Colt held her gaze, his silence steady, his answer written not in words but in the coat upon her shoulders. He did not send her away. He could not. And though the storm raged, though the world outside was filled with scorn and judgment, within that moment something fragile but undeniable was born. The fire still glowed inside, Tiva sleeping against its warmth, unaware of the storm beyond. Naeli's eyes glistened with rain and something deeper. For the first time, she allowed her voice to tremble. Perhaps tradition was not shame. Perhaps it was a gift. Colt felt the truth of it lodge in his chest, heavy as a stone, bright as a spark. Yet he could not name it. Not yet. The storm's roar seemed to press the world close around them, and as lightning split the sky, he wondered if what had begun in bread and hunger would end in ruin or in the first breath of salvation.